Thanks very much, Kevin. Hello, everyone. What a turnout. Just incredible. Thank you, OCAL, for organizing this. I'm going to speak briefly about where we're at with efforts to influence, I guess we'll say, official thinking, public health and governmental thinking, prevention system thinking around some of the ideas that have been presented today. I first just want to very briefly thank OCAL not just for organizing this session, but organizing so many others all through 2020 that have made such a huge difference, creating a community of collaboration, which I know has had an impact to save lives, and also to say how it illustrates the power of an interdisciplinary approach. I mean, today we had Ray Tellier, an infectious disease physician and microbiologist, two engineers, Stéphane Bilodeau and Jeff Siegel, and we had Simon Smith, who just finished. So this highlights the complexity of preventing infection, but also the robust range of prevention approaches which we can utilize. So you've seen interdisciplinary work in action. I also want to say that it's been a pleasure to get to know Ray, Stéphane, and Simon in a very ambitious initiative that got launched before the holidays to mobilize a whole range of experts to advocate for prevention of aerosol exposure. I've benefited tremendously from getting to know them, working with them, and having that interdisciplinary perspective, and also, of course, at such a high level of expertise and knowledge. We were inspired by the 239 expert letter that was sent to the WHO in July of 2020. So we thought, let's do one in Canada. A coalition came together, including Workplace Health Without Borders, and along with Kevin, I'm on the board of directors for that organization. And Masks for Canada, which is a Canada-wide group, the Canadian Registration Board for Occupational Hygienists, and finally two Quebec organizations, Mission Panache and COVID Stop. So we had a very strong, and do have a very strong representation from Quebec as well as the rest of Canada. We spent an intensive few weeks developing an open letter. The open letter was delivered on January 4th to all the provincial and territorial governments and to their medical officers of health, and also to the federal government and the federal chief medical officer of health, Dr. Tam. We succeeded in having it signed by over 360 Canadian experts in a broad range of disciplines. And since the signing and submission, even more experts and organizations have signed on. This is a very widely supported letter, and when you go to this, see the list, it is really pretty incredible, the range and high level of expertise. So we're dealing with a highly credible group, including many people with big careers and big profiles in mainstream fields in engineering, medicine, hygiene, nursing, etc. Our letter was an attempt to be practical, as well, I guess, as visionary, but mostly practical, along the lines of what you've heard today. So we focused on the need for improved ventilation and the broader use of more protective PPE. And I'm pleased to say the results have already been positive. We're sitting here on January 29th. The letter went in on January 4th. That's 25 days. Within that 25-day period, we've had important new guidance from the Public Health Agency of Canada around ventilation. I think it's a step forward. And some modest steps forward around PPE and acute healthcare, but unfortunately, they're still built around the concept of putting the burden on the individual healthcare worker through a point of care risk assessment. But having said that, it's progress, and the feds have gone beyond what a lot of the provinces have been doing. So the positioning we've taken is that at minimum, the provincial governments and their regulatory authorities should adopt the current PHAC guidance, while we're considering going further in recognition of our other recommendations. I won't go into detail on this given the time, but there are some amazing developments internationally in the US, Germany's been mentioned, in other countries. There are also initiatives a lot like our expert letter initiative in the UK, in Australia, and probably some other places. So something big is happening right now. And I think it's happening because people know how urgent this is. And now, unfortunately, with the news of the slowdown in vaccination in Canada in particular, and also the rise of virus variants, we can see that the path forward may not be quite as clear as we thought, which was get those vaccinations out there, problem goes away. We may be in for a really rough start to 2021, even if it ends up reasonably well. So this is urgent stuff. I'll paste into the chat the links to the PHAC ventilation guidance and the guidance for acute healthcare. I'll also paste in a way for you to sign on individually to the letter. If you want to sign on organizationally, we do monitor that quite closely, so please contact me directly. I'll put in my email address. And now for what you can do. We're going to be releasing very soon a follow-up letter that we've been drafting as a coalition. It's framed as an urgent call. Hey, we didn't just send you something on January 4th to file away somewhere. We need answers. We need action. And we're ready to help. We're stepping up. We want to work with governments and public health authorities. So when that letter's released, probably next week, we'll be sending it out very widely and asking you to endorse and support it. Do whatever you can in your organization to get aerosol transmission recognized and to take the practical steps that people like Stefan, Simon, and Jeff have recommended. Easy stuff. Some of it can be done almost immediately in many different vulnerable workplace settings. Some will take longer, but it'll be well worth the investment for future protection. So aerosol transmission is not just a scientific issue. It's not just something for people in an ivory tower to debate about. It is a life and death issue. This is a vital stage of the pandemic. We can make an impact, and we must make an impact. So I'll stop there. And next thing you'll see hopefully soon is the follow-up letter and your chance to weigh in and get some action taken. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alec. So it looks like we've come to a close. Did you want to say any closing words, Kimberly?
No, I was hoping we could take some questions for the panel for anyone staying. Kevin, we will capture, but besides Alec's conclusion, I know we're at time, but once we fit that in, if others wanted to stay, we will stay as long as we have answers, but we may be losing speakers along the way. So I'd rather not speak, but hear. Great, and I think we had Simon as well. Simon and Stefan, it was just Raymond and Jeffrey. If we can take a couple, if not, it's fine, Kevin, not a worry. Sorry, we communicated that at the beginning as well. I apologize.
We are going to try and compile a lot of these questions and, try and, coordinate answers to the questions as well. So I don't know if anybody, maybe, somebody might want to, if they want to ask a question, they may want to put their hand up. And maybe they could even show themselves. That kind of breaks it up a bit. Does anybody actually want to ask a question to the rest of us?
Yes, I do. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, my name is Sheba Sybil. We are a legal clinic and we rent out space, probably around 2,000 square feet. And the windows are sealed, so and because it's the landlord who controls the ventilation, we really have no control over it other than our heat and cold regulator. So that's all we can control. And the ventilation, obviously there's a false ceiling, so the air comes from above. And so we're not sure exactly how to go about in terms of the filtration. I mean, we could put portable units of with the HEPA filter, but after the talk today, I'm not sure whether they are really effective. And we am not sure if we can put in the UV filtration system that was recommended. I was told I could probably go in for a portable air heat exchanger with an access to the outside. So I'm sort of trying to figure out what would be the best way to see if we can get good air quality. I mean, would the first thing do to get the air quality tested, or is there a way to find out if there is a good filter, if the system which is working appropriately in today's conditions?
Before I put it out there, I might just start off with it this way. You know, Sheba, the first thing to do is ask the question, do people need to be in that office area? Like, do you need to be there? Could you work remotely? I mean, just to go through that process to start off with. And if so, you know, can you stagger who's there? Could you have like one person in there and just alternate perhaps? And so just to go through that, you know, process first, that thinking first. And then if you find that you really need to think about the ventilation, then it's really about, you know, making sure that you engage with the building owner and, you know, the HVAC technicians. But at that point, I might just hand it over. Maybe Stefan might want to take it to the next step.
I can give just quick insights. Indeed, it's since the building is owned by the owner, your access to the outside air is limited. So that would be a first solution if you could be having some access to it. But definitely talking to the owner and see what is allowing to do. It's important. And then you can, in some tenants are allowed to have their own whatever engineers or professional looking at the very situation you have. And then they can do, if there's a need for testing the air quality, that might be the first thing to do, just to first evaluate or assess what's happening, what is the case. And then to look at potential adaptation. But the fact is, definitely, as Kevin said, the owner has a big portion of the equation in his control. If the other thing is also to ask questions. By the way, you're there, so ask questions on the system that is already there. So the actual air handling unit in this building. If there is none, the answer is easy. But if there is, what kind of filtration they're using, what kind of air intake they're having. And you can ask professionals to help you doing that, but definitely ask questions would be the first thing. And ask for your capacity and working with professionals in your sector. I would start there.
Just trying to drop this ventilation checklist into the chat box. And so this is really just a first pass, so to speak, you know.
I can do that for you, Kevin, if it helps while you do.
I just did it. So I just put the ventilation checklist in the, I think I did.
Do you want Jennifer to do a question then?
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
It's in there.
Jennifer.
So, go on, go for it, Jennifer.
Yes, there is a question about they're looking for what the 80% efficiency is.
Oh yes, that's from Marie. Sorry to tell you, it was. She mentioned there's a standard from the Gouvernement in Quebec about 80% efficiency. That was for, I think, public face coverings, and I've been reviewing some standards around that issue, and that I think there's an 80% or 70% number mentioned in those. It depends on the standard. But in that case, they aren't doing the testing at the most penetrating particle size. They're using a broad spectrum of particles. So in fact, the efficiency at the most penetrating size is actually lower than the 80%. Potentially depends on the dispersion. So they're doing that to make things easier to breathe through. If there is a document, it will be very useful to read it fully, just to understand a bit more about that before I sort of put my foot in my mouth and comment on something that's maybe different. I think
Thanks,
it is.
Simon. Thank you.
Go ahead.
There
was one actually about exhalation valves. I have a slide.
Perfect.
If I can share the screen. I did anticipate a question on that, but and I think as has been put in chat already, there's a study from NIOSH. This is the website on respirators with exhalation valves. This is Filtering thesis, and a technical report you can download. And I just pulled a few images from that into the presentation slide. And they're looking there. Actually, what they do for testing these, in this case, is to mount them backwards, as it were, into a filter tester, so that they feed the aerosol into the respirator and then measure what comes through the exhalation valve as it's working in its exhalation mode, as it were. And looking at methods by which you can block a valve, either by taping it on the inside or sticking a cover on the outside, or doing a double masking. This is sometimes done with a surgical mask over an exhalation valve. First, the simulations on the left show the release of particles from using a filtering face piece without a valve, and then one with a pore face fit, like a surgical mask. And you see that even with an exhalation valve, the spread of particle release is much lower than it is with something like a surgical mask. It begs the question, if the medical community in general is happy with a surgical mask for sterile field use, why do they have a problem with a filtering face piece with an exhalation valve? It's actually releasing less. That's a level of understanding and education that probably has to go into that community, just to point that out. And unfortunately, we get into this fact that because surgical masks and similar have FDA approval, they sort of have magic properties, and they're good for everything. And this is not the case, as this diagram shows. On the right, the different methods of actually blocking a surgical mask with an exhalation valve. Sorry, I'm not blocking a respirator with an exhalation valve. You can use them if they have been supplied, but actually change the function so that the valve is not in use. And the graphic down below shows the penetration efficiency or effectiveness on this. Actually, higher is worse against different flow rates of the filter mounted forward or backward. Out position means that they were feeding the aerosol into the interior of the respirator and watching what came out through the valve, and you see that is depends on flow rate and is quite large, which is what you'd expect with no control over it. When you did the taping or covering, you can see that the taping or covering the valve is quite effective. To second from the left and the middle one, but actually the masking over, which is something that's fairly commonly done, is much less effective than taping the valve inside. So this again is an education for the community that while many are adding a surgical mask over an exhalation valve for protection, in fact there's much better protection offered by covering the instead. So
and that's covering.
There's a lot more. Yeah,
that's covering the valve from the inside, Simon, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, one is, yes, we used some tape, and I believe, as I saw a note this week, that 3M, a company with market share in this, has actually had some NIOSH approval for product duct tape over the exhalation valve taped from the inside. But because of the nature of NIOSH approvals, where they're very specific about what can be used, there are only certain types and colors of duct tape that are approved. So I think we can share an item on that as well. But, a link on that. Green lives again.
While we've got you, respirators currently being authorised by Health Canada. I noticed there's a CAN 99 and a CAN 95, but when I went looking for the specs, the specifications, I couldn't find them online.
Oh, requirements from Health Canada?
There's a respirator. It's called.
I understand. Yes. Okay, so this is to explain the sort of current situation, and I might just have a slide on. A slide on that too. As I prepared some extra slides just in case, and one of these is question on that. It's really what has happened over this year. What happened with the historic situation, as I mentioned, was that NIOSH did this approval of all kinds of respirators for Canada. Health Canada, in parallel, had an approval system for medical devices, which did cover certain things like surgical masks. But it was more of an administrative approval historically, that it was just that it addressed business practices so that if they needed to a recall, records were kept. This year, Health Canada then developed its own set of requirements for an interim authorization, as they call it, interim order, and that set certain requirements matching NIOSH that Health Canada would accept when products came into effect in August, very recent. Another presentation addressing that. This is this is a summary of that standard right now. They brought this standard in so that companies in Canada can approval for use in Canada. And the problem with NIOSH is that they had normally, historically, about a 3-month wait time for a simple type of respirator. It could be up to a year for a complex respirator to go through their approval process, testing in their labs and everything, and the paperwork. Comprehensive. They do a lot of verification of quality of production and maintenance of records and so on, as capability of the product itself. That's a whole other talk. It did take time. With the pandemic, what happened in the US is that they prioritized US companies and filtering base pieces. So companies with elastomeric type respirators or new companies in Canada trying to get products onto the market were deprioritized, and it could still take months to get the approval. So Health Canada came up with a specification, and you may see now these 9995 PFE products to allow products to be sold in Canada this time of shortage. What is going to happen? That Canadian Standards Association is developing a new standard on respirator performance for Canada. It's a current process. I'm involved in that myself. And so that is expected to be ready at the end of March for public comment and finally issued in October. But that will bring with it a whole system of respirator approvals for Canada in parallel with NIOSH. So it's an interesting situation. NIOSH will be accepted as an approval for use in Canada, but there will be specific needs for options for Canadian companies. The focus is on the priority for healthcare needs, but it's likely to extend to other types of respirator across the board, supplied air equipment, and even CBRN in the future. Health Canada's got is on the screen there that classification structure, so they combined NIOSH efficiencies and the fluid resistance levels from the Food and Drug Administration clearance into a structured system. It does create rather a lot of choice for types of respirator, though. That's something to be aware of. But they've added a couple of things to NIOSH. They want fit testing based on the CSA style of fit testing, a strap mechanical strength test, actually have it stretch it and see if it breaks, and biocompatibility requirements. That's ensuring that the material that contacts the skin does not cause irritation or other problems for the wearer. And they've introduced shelf life requirements. Interestingly, shelf life, we talk about stockpiling and shelf life and so on. NIOSH actually never sets a shelf life in its standards. It doesn't require manufacturers to set one. Canadian standard will. So that's part of it. There's then other side of it, which is the sort of documentation side. They do require companies to demonstrate the quality of their manufacturing, their process, and their quality control programs and sampling and data maintenance and so on. It's not possible just to submit at one time, the best one you pick out of the box and submit that and everything's good, and you forget the rest. No, it has to be an ongoing provision of quality product for the duration.
Simon, I hope you don't mind putting you on the spot.
Nope.
But Joseph Allen, Professor Joseph Allen, wrote something recently. I think it was for the Washington Post, where he was really advocating N95s for the public. And he was sort of looking at, especially with what's happening in Bavaria and other countries around the world. That's where we're going. And if he had his choice, then he'd probably definitely go for an N95. And then his second choice, I think he was talking about a K95. And his third choice was a KN95,
yes.
But in that kind of order. And I see, you can get KN95s at Costco. You can buy a box at Costco for $20, so they're $1 each. And, thinking about Fix the Mask, which I think came out in one of our last webinars, and also, a colleague of ours is sort of looking at putting Fix the Mask around the KN95 to improve the face seal.
Yeah.
Now, I know without doing a proper fit test, you can't really comment, but did you have any thoughts about that? Could you offer any comments on that?
Well, there's a question. There's a table showing that may be sold in Canada, and you see that first, roughly what an N95 is low, better, and so suitable for use, and some you would not consider for use. But KN95 is in there. With these, between a KN95 and an N type, normally these filtration performance requirements is the same, but there are differences. I think I have done actually an inward leakage test, which NIOSH doesn't have, But the key factor is that KN95 approval system does not have the same quality, so they don't verify the performance and quality systems of the manufacturers themselves, don't audit manufacturers, and so there can be deviations in quality over manufacturing. Another issue with KN95s is that although there's that fit test there, it is actually designed for Asian head types. And there's been a study, and publication out of Carleton University, in fact, where they were surveying the head profile of Chinese and Caucasian head types, and there's a difference. So that a product that may fit in a test in China may well not fit a Caucasian face, because the profile is ovoid for Caucasians versus rounded for the Asian head type. Asian people trying to buy ski helmets or bike helmets, they have difficulty getting a good fit because of the different shape that is offered. And so there is a difference there that's innate. Even if it passes every standard, it still may not fit well to the face. So you're talking then about going to sort of double masking. That was part of the question?
Called the Fix the Mask. We had a person on the webinar, last one that I was part of, that she talked about Fix the, and I didn't know about it before then. And then, a colleague of ours, Jen, actually bought a Fix the Mask, and because she thought that the KN95 was quite well suited for her face, and by putting the mask on, it put the straps around the back of the head, and it pulled the whole respirator in closer, I guess, to the
on the spot question. But yes, I would see that the improvement of the seal around, or to the face, around the perimeter of the in that case, would be expected to improve fit. For instance, does not approve, it's for their experience, the group type products, they aim at they will not be even testing those because they found through their experience that it has not worked for a good fit. So the head, or the straps around the back of the head, and 2 points of fixation are generally considered the minimum for suitable attachment to the face or closure to the face that gives you the requisite seal. So I think those things are possibilities, but I've read
Simon.
Regular respirators.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And it's interesting, Kevin's question is around the public versus, our entire dogma is enter into our brains around respiratory protection includes a whole program, right? It's not just about the respirator. So we're all, trying to navigate occupational health and public health. And so the questions are sound. Is it okay if we've lost 2/3 and a lot of our speakers, and we really appreciate, Simon, that you stuck around because we had to, we're always tight for time, but is it okay to say hello, say thank you to all our attendees?
Thank you. Yes,
Okay.
and very educational. Thanks. And if I'd left an email on this slide, so if there's any further questions.
Great. Wonderful. Well, have a good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for coming.